I gave your apartment keys to your sister, Mom said casually. She's moving in while you're on vacation. I stood ankle deep in the Aegean Sea, staring at the bright blue water. Behind me, people laughed beneath white umbrellas. A waiter carried iced coffee across the sand. Somewhere nearby, a child screamed happily as a wave destroyed his sandcastle. Everything around me was peaceful. My life, apparently, had just been stolen. What did you say? I asked. Mom sighed. That sigh had followed me through childhood. It meant I was being difficult again. It meant Ava needed something, and I was expected to stop asking questions. I gave Ava your spare key, she repeated. She needed somewhere to stay. That key was for emergencies. This is an emergency. Is my apartment burning? Don't be ridiculous. Did a pipe burst? No. Then what emergency? She was evicted. I closed my eyes. I had been in Greece for 4 days. It was the first real vacation I had taken in 6 years. I managed one of the busiest McDonald's branches in our region. My job was not glamorous, but it was demanding. I supervised 40 employees, handled schedules, inventory, inspections, customer complaints, broken equipment, missing cash, supplier delays, and teenagers who called in sick before posting party videos online. Most weeks, I worked more than 50 hours. For years, every planned vacation had been interrupted by some crisis. This time, I had trained 2 assistant managers, prepared the schedule a month ahead, and promised myself 10 days without fixing anyone else's problems. My family had waited until I left the country to create the biggest one yet. How long was Ava behind on rent? I asked. That doesn't matter. How long? 3 months. And why didn't she pay? She lost her job. She was fired for throwing a drink at her supervisor. You only heard one side. I saw the video. Mom's voice hardened. This is exactly why she was afraid to ask you. You are always judging her. She didn't ask me. She knew you would say no. That should have ended the conversation. Liam, you're in Greece. You aren't even using the apartment. I'm coming home in 6 days. By then, we'll have figured something out. The word we made my stomach tighten. Where is Ava right now? In your apartment. I stepped out of the water. What do you mean, in my apartment? She already moved some things. When? 2 days ago. You gave her my key 2 days ago and waited until now to tell me? I wanted you to enjoy your holiday. Who else is there? Mason is helping her. Is Mason moving in too? Mom hesitated. Ava had been dating Mason for 5 months. He called himself a digital entrepreneur, which seemed to mean that he filmed motivational videos and rented cars. They're building a future together, Mom said. That was not my question. They shouldn't be forced to live separately. So 2 unemployed adults moved into my apartment without permission. Ava is between opportunities. She is unemployed. You always reduce people to their worst moment. No, Mom. I reduce rent to something that must be paid. She exhaled sharply. You have a stable income. You have no children. You can afford to help. I already helped. I paid her car insurance for 7 months. I covered her phone bill. I gave her money for that makeup course. She is still finding herself. She has been finding herself with my money since she was 21. Your sister is vulnerable. And that makes my apartment hers? You are being cruel. I pressed my fingers against my forehead. What have they moved? Clothes, boxes, a few pieces of furniture? My apartment is furnished. Ava said your furniture made the place look depressing. The beach suddenly felt too hot. What did she do with my furniture? She moved some things around. What things? I don't know. You were there. Silence. You helped her move in. I helped my daughter avoid homelessness. You have 2 daughters now? Don't twist my words. I'm your son, Mom. You know what I meant. Where is my desk? Another silence. My grandfather's desk had been in the spare bedroom. It was dark oak, heavy and scratched, with one drawer that never closed properly. He had used it in his hardware store for 40 years. When he died, it was the only thing I asked to keep. Ava needed the room, Mom said. For what? A beauty studio. I almost laughed. She moved into my home and opened a business? She is trying to rebuild her life. Where is the desk? Mason put it downstairs. Downstairs where? I don't know. Near the loading entrance. My hand tightened around the phone. Put Ava on. She is busy. Doing what? Changing the locks. For a few seconds, I heard nothing but the wind. She changed my locks? The old one was difficult. It worked perfectly. She wanted to feel safe. It is not her apartment. You keep saying that like she is a stranger. She has no legal right to live there. Mom's voice became cold. Your landlord will never know. That sentence told me everything. They knew it was wrong. They knew they needed to hide it. And they believed I would protect them afterward because that was what I had always done. Enjoy your vacation, Mom continued. When you come home, we can discuss a sensible arrangement. No. What? We won't discuss anything. I ended the call. Then I searched for my landlord's number. Daniel Whitaker answered on the third ring. He was 62 and lived on the first floor of my building with his wife and an overweight golden retriever named Winston. He owned 3 small apartment buildings and treated them like ships that required constant maintenance. Liam, he said, how is Greece? Daniel, I need your help. I explained everything. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he asked one question. Did you authorize your sister to enter the apartment? No. Did you authorize anyone to change the lock? No. Did you give permission for additional occupants? No. Daniel became quiet. That is what I was afraid of. I stood still. What do you mean? Yesterday, I received a tenant addition form from an email address similar to yours. It listed Ava Morgan and Mason Reed as approved occupants. My skin turned cold. I never sent that. It included your signature. I didn't sign anything. I suspected the signature was copied. Why? Because the form said you had accepted a 6-month transfer to Chicago. I managed a McDonald's in Ohio. No one was transferring me anywhere. What did you do? I rejected the form and asked you to call me personally. No one responded. My phone was in the hotel safe most of yesterday. I need you to email me a statement confirming you did not authorize entry, occupancy, lock replacement, or changes to your lease. I'll send it now. I also need permission to enter. You have it. Good. His voice changed. It was no longer the voice of a landlord discussing paperwork. It was the voice of a man who had discovered someone had tried to deceive him inside his own building. Do not call your family, he said. Let me document everything before they remove evidence. What are you going to do? I'm going upstairs. 10 minutes later, my phone exploded. Mom called first, then Ava, then Dad, who had not spoken to me in weeks. Mason called twice. Within 5 minutes, I had 13 missed calls. Within 10 minutes, there were 41. I did not answer any of them. Instead, I opened Daniel's message. Your property is still here. Call me immediately. I called. What happened? I tried my master key. The lock cylinder had been replaced, so I brought a locksmith after receiving your written authorization. And? There were 4 people inside. Your sister, her boyfriend, your mother, and a man from a furniture resale company. My mouth went dry. Furniture resale? They were preparing to remove your dining table, television stand, bed frame, and several boxes. They were selling my furniture? The buyer said Ava told him the apartment belonged to her and the furniture had been abandoned. I sat on the edge of the hotel bed. What about my grandfather's desk? It was in the loading area. My chest tightened. The buyer had already put a price sticker on it. How much? $75. For a moment, I could not speak. My grandfather had raised me during the years Dad worked late, and Mom devoted every spare minute to Ava's problems. He had taught me how to repair a chair, balance a budget, and never sign anything I had not read. They had priced the last thing I owned from him at $75. What did you do? I asked. I stopped the sale and called the police. I stood up. Are they still there? They were removed from the unit. Arrested? Not yet. Your sister claimed you had gifted her the lease. Mason produced the forged form. Your mother said she had authority because she is your mother. I stared at the wall. Daniel continued. I asked them to show one message where you gave permission. They had nothing. I heard Ava shouting somewhere behind him. You're ruining my life! Daniel moved away from the noise. There is something else, he said. Of course there is. I found a lease termination notice on your kitchen counter. I stopped breathing. What? It states that you intend to move out at the end of the month. They were ending my lease? It appears they plan to submit it after your return date. Why? Your sister also submitted her own application for the apartment. She cannot qualify. She listed your father as guarantor. That explained Dad's calls. This had not been a desperate decision made after Ava lost her home. It had been planned. They waited until I left the country. They copied my signature. They changed my locks. They moved in. They prepared to sell my belongings and terminate my lease. By the time I returned, they expected the apartment to belong to Ava. And they believed I would surrender rather than create a scene. Daniel, I said, do whatever you need to protect the property. I suggest you stay in Greece. I was thinking about flying back. Don't. His answer was immediate. That is exactly what they want. They want you exhausted and angry in the same room so they can pressure you. Your apartment is secure. Finish your vacation. Behind him, Ava shouted that I was a pathetic fast food worker who thought wearing a tie made him important. Daniel waited until she stopped. For what it's worth, he said, I've seen you leave for work at 4 in the morning during snowstorms. I know which person in your family is responsible. That sentence hit me harder than I expected. I thanked him and ended the call. Then I listened to the voicemails. Mom said Daniel was behaving like a criminal. Ava said I had humiliated her in front of the police. Dad ordered me to call before I destroyed the family. Mason said I needed to fix the situation because they had nowhere to sleep. Not one person apologized for entering my home. Not one mentioned my forged signature. Not one apologized for trying to sell my belongings. They were only angry that I had stopped them. I turned off my phone and returned to the beach. For the first time in my life, I allowed my family to face a crisis without rushing home to solve it. The reliable son, in my family, Ava had always been the dreamer. I was the reliable one. When I worked evenings at a grocery store during high school, Mom called me mature. When Ava stole her credit card to buy concert tickets, Mom called her impulsive but sensitive. When I attended community college while working at McDonald's, Dad asked when I planned to find a real career. When Ava dropped out of university after one semester, my parents said traditional education had crushed her creativity. I stayed at McDonald's because I was good at the job. At 26, I became assistant manager. At 29, I was promoted to branch manager. The restaurant had been one of the worst locations in the district. Staff turnover was high, inventory losses were constant, and customer complaints appeared every day. Within 18 months, our sales improved, waste dropped, and employee turnover fell by nearly half. Corporate began sending new managers to train under me. I earned bonuses, health insurance, paid vacation, and enough money to live comfortably. My parents still introduced me by saying, Liam works at McDonald's. Ava, meanwhile, had been a makeup artist, lifestyle coach, jewelry designer, event planner, social media consultant, and online boutique owner. None of those careers lasted a year. Mom introduced her as an entrepreneur. Whenever Ava failed, I was expected to help. I paid her overdue car insurance. I covered 2 months of rent after her boutique collapsed. I gave her money for a makeup certification she never completed. I paid part of Dad's truck repair. I helped Mom with dental bills. Every request came with the same sentence. Family helps family. But in our family, help only moved in one direction. During the rest of my vacation, Daniel sent daily updates. The apartment was secure. The locks had been replaced. The building access code was changed. My belongings were photographed and returned. The police report was ready. My family continued calling. 41 calls became 60, then 80. Mom sent messages about betrayal. Dad sent commands. Ava alternated between crying and threatening to expose me online. On the 8th day, Mom wrote, Your sister is sleeping on our sofa because of you. Your father's blood pressure is dangerously high. I hope Greece was worth it. I typed one question. Did you forge my signature? She did not answer for 6 hours. Then she wrote, We did what we had to do. I took a screenshot and sent it to Daniel. For once, Mom's manipulation had become evidence. Coming home. When I returned, Daniel met me at the entrance with Winston beside him. He handed me 2 new keys. Welcome home. The apartment looked as though someone had tried to erase me. Pink curtains had replaced mine. My dishes were packed in boxes. Ava's clothes filled my bedroom closet. Makeup powder covered the carpet in the spare room. One wall had been painted beige halfway up. My mattress had a wine stain. My grandfather's desk had been scratched across the top. I ran my fingers over the damaged wood. That scratch did what 41 calls could not. It removed the last piece of guilt I still felt. Daniel placed a folder on the desk. Inside were photographs, police documents, camera footage, copies of the forged forms, and a statement from the furniture buyer. They also contacted the utility company, he said. For what? To transfer electricity into Ava's name. I looked around my apartment. They were thorough. No, I said. They were confident. That evening, Mom, Dad, Ava, and Mason arrived at the building. Daniel offered to send them away. I told him to let them in. We met in the small community room near the lobby. Ava rushed toward me. You ruined my life! Do not come closer. She froze. Mom stared at me. Is that how you speak to your sister? It is how I speak to someone who broke into my home. We did not break in, Mom replied. I had a key. A key for emergencies. Ava was homeless. She was evicted because she spent her rent money on a trip. I was depressed, Ava shouted. You went to Miami. I needed to reset. You stayed at a beachfront hotel. It was discounted. Dad slammed his palm on the table. We are not here to discuss Ava's spending. Then why are you here? To resolve this. There is nothing to resolve. Ava and Mason are not living in my apartment. Mom leaned forward. We understand you are upset. No, you understand your plan failed. Dad's face darkened. Watch your tone. I opened Daniel's folder and placed the forged tenant form on the table. Who signed my name? No one answered. Who copied my signature? Mom looked at Ava. Ava looked at Dad. Finally, Mom said, Ava filled out the form. Ava turned on her. You told me to! I told you to handle the paperwork. You said Liam would agree later. Mason closed his eyes. I placed the lease termination notice beside the first document. Who wrote this? Dad answered. I did. I looked at him. You tried to end my lease? We thought it would simplify things. For whom? For everyone. You mean for Ava? She needs that apartment more than you do. The room went silent. I waited, giving him the chance to correct himself. He did not. You can afford another place, Dad continued. You have a stable income. I have lived there for 7 years. You have no children. Neither does Ava. She is trying to build a future. And I am not? Dad sighed impatiently. Liam, you are 32. You manage a fast food restaurant. You are comfortable. Ava still has potential. Even Daniel looks shocked. I nodded slowly. There it is. What? Dad asked. The truth. I'm being realistic. No. You are saying that because I work, save money, and solve my own problems, I deserve less. That is not what I said. It is exactly what you said. Mom reached for my hand. Your father only means that you are stronger. I stepped away. That sentence had controlled my whole life. Liam is stronger. Liam can handle disappointment. Liam can work overtime. Liam can lend the money. Liam can give up his room. Liam can wait. Liam does not need help. You mistake strength for permission, I said. Mom's hand fell. Ava pushed a folder toward me. Since you care so much about documents, look at this. Inside was a handwritten list. Locksmith, moving truck, storage, food, gas, hotel costs. At the bottom, she had written a total of $4,860. What is this? I asked. What you owe us? Daniel laughed before he could stop himself. Ava glared at him. We spent money moving because Mom told us the apartment was available. Then Liam changed his mind. I never offered it. You knew I needed help. That is not permission. You should reimburse us. For selling my furniture? We needed space. For forging my name? You were overseas. For trying to end my lease? You can afford something better, her voice cracked. That was the center of her logic. If I could survive without something, she believed she deserved to take it. I'm not paying you anything, I said. Mom began crying. You are abandoning your sister over an apartment. No, I am cutting off 4 adults who committed fraud because they thought I was too weak to stop them. Dad stood up. You will not speak to your mother that way. No. He blinked. I had never said that word to him so calmly. No, I repeated. You do not get to demand respect while defending people who forged my signature. We made a mistake. A mistake is forgetting to lock a door. This required planning. Mom's crying became louder. I cannot believe my son is treating me like a criminal. You committed a crime. I was helping my daughter. You have 2 children. For 1 second, her tears stopped. Daniel stepped forward. This meeting is over, Dad pointed at him. Stay out of family business. You brought your family business into my property when you falsified documents using my company's name. Dad lowered his hand. Daniel opened the door. You need to leave. Ava grabbed her folder. This is not over. I looked directly at her. Yes, it is. The next morning, I went through my bank account. For years, automatic payments had left it every month. Mom's phone plan, Dad's supplemental insurance, Ava's car insurance, a streaming package shared by the family, a monthly transfer of $400 to my parents. I canceled everything. Then I changed my passwords, removed Mom as my emergency contact, and froze my credit. That afternoon, I met with an attorney. He sent formal letters demanding that my family preserve all messages and documents related to the apartment. He also sent a request for compensation: lock replacement, wall repair, carpet cleaning, mattress replacement, damage to the desk, legal costs. Total, $6,340. Mom called from an unfamiliar number. $6,000? She shouted. You are suing your own family? I am requesting payment for the damage. Ava does not have that money. Then she should not have damaged my apartment. Your father cannot afford this. He forged the termination notice. We thought you would understand. I understand everything now. What happened to you in Greece? Nothing. That was the truth. Nothing had happened to me. No one had surrounded me. No one had shouted until I surrendered. No one had cried in front of relatives. I had been thousands of miles away. Distance forced me to solve the problem without guilt. One phone call, one email, one boundary. That was all it took. You used to care about us, Mom whispered. I used to pay for you. That is disgusting. What is disgusting is that you cannot tell the difference. I ended the call. The consequences came quickly. Ava's car insurance expired. Because the car was financed, the lender added its own expensive coverage. Mom's phone line was suspended. Dad's insurance payment bounced. Then the monthly transfer did not arrive. 3 days later, Dad called. We are short on the mortgage. I sat in my office at the restaurant. Outside the glass, my lunch crew handled a rush. Orders flashed across screens. Fries dropped into oil. My assistant manager guided 2 new employees without losing control. The job my family mocked had paid their bills for years. What do you want me to do? I asked. Restart the transfer. No, this is our home, and that was mine. You are punishing us. I stopped subsidizing you. Family helps family. Family does not forge family's signature. Dad was silent. Then he changed his tone. We can apologize. For what? For how everything happened. That is not an apology. What do you want me to say? The truth. He breathed heavily. This is childish. No, childish is believing that an apology is a password that restores access to my bank account. I ended the call. Ava's last attack. 2 weeks later, Ava posted a video online. She sat in my parents' living room wrapped in a blanket. The caption said, "When your own brother makes you homeless to feel powerful." She claimed I had promised her the apartment and changed my mind after she moved in. She said I used my money and influence to send police after her. My money and influence. I managed a McDonald's. Several relatives messaged me. An aunt said my grandfather would be ashamed. A family friend called me heartless. Then Ava made a mistake. She held up the forged tenant form as proof that I had agreed. My attorney saved the video. So did Daniel. The police contacted Ava the next morning. The family group chat suddenly came alive. Dad told her to delete the video. Mom told her not to speak to anyone. Ava wrote that I had set her up. I replied with one message. You publicly displayed a document containing my forged signature. She answered, you signed it. I wrote, then why did Mom admit that you filled it out? No one replied. 5 minutes later, the family chat disappeared. I already had screenshots. The case did not end with Ava in prison. Real life is rarely that dramatic. She accepted a diversion agreement, paid restitution, completed community service, and agreed not to enter Daniel's properties. Mason cooperated with investigators. He admitted that Ava believed I would eventually surrender because I hated conflict. He also admitted that selling my furniture had been her idea. Their relationship ended 2 months later. Apparently, romance became less exciting when they were sleeping on my parents' sofa and arguing about legal bills. My parents sold Dad's truck to cover part of the restitution and their overdue mortgage. Mom returned to part-time work. Ava found a supermarket job. She quit after 3 weeks because the manager did not respect her energy. Then my cousin Emily called. I need to tell you something, she said. What? Your mom spoke to relatives before you went to Greece. My grip tightened around the phone. What did she say? That you were moving to Chicago and giving the apartment to Ava. So this was planned before I left? Yes. Who knew? Several people. The betrayal cut deeper than I expected. Mom had created a story in advance. If I protested after returning, relatives would believe I had broken a promise. There is more, Emily said. I almost laughed. Of course. Your mom also said you would probably give Ava money to start a beauty studio. I looked toward the spare room, the half-painted wall, the moved desk, the boxes. They had not only planned to take my apartment, they had planned to take my savings next. In their minds, my future was already family property. That evening, I made my final decision. I bought a house. It was not large, 2 bedrooms, a narrow yard, an old kitchen, and a detached garage. But it was mine. I used the savings my family had expected me to hand to Ava. Daniel allowed me to end my lease early. On moving day, he helped carry my grandfather's desk into the new office. We placed it beneath a window overlooking the yard. The scratch Ava had made was still visible. I decided not to repair it. It reminded me that something could be damaged without being destroyed. 1 year later. A year after Greece, Mom called. I almost ignored her. Then I answered. Your father had a heart scare, she said. Is he alive? Yes, he is home. What did the doctor say? He needs less stress. I waited. We could use some help, she continued. There it was. Not an apology, not concern about my life, a request. What kind of help? Financial. No. You did not even ask how much. It doesn't matter. He is your father, and I hope he recovers. We might lose the house. Ava lives with you. She can contribute. Ava is going through a difficult period. When is she not? That is cruel. No. Cruel was teaching her that everyone else must suffer to protect her from consequences. Mom started crying. This time, I felt sad, but I did not feel guilty. That was the difference. I miss my son, she whispered. You miss the version of me who paid. That is not true. When was the last time you asked about my work? Silence. Do you know I bought a house? More silence. Do you know my restaurant was ranked first in the district? She said nothing. Do you know I am being considered for a district management position? Liam, you do not miss me. You miss access to me. Her voice became small. What would it take for you to forgive us? For months, I had imagined that question. I thought I would demand the perfect apology. I thought I would list every dollar, every insult, every time they chose Ava. But forgiveness was not the same as restoration. I could stop carrying anger without handing them another key. I already forgave you, I said. She sounded relieved. Then perhaps we can start again. No. What? I forgave you so I would not carry you into my future. That does not mean I must return you to the position you abused. That is not forgiveness. It is the only kind I can offer. I ended the call. That evening I drove home through light rain. My house was silent when I entered. No strangers had moved in. No furniture was missing. No one had changed the locks. My grandfather's desk stood beneath the office window. On top of it was a framed photograph from Greece. The beach, the sea, the exact place where Mom told me she had given away my home. For a long time, I believed that call ruined my vacation. Now I knew it had saved my life. Had Mom waited until I returned, they would have surrounded me. Dad would have shouted. Ava would have cried. Mom would have repeated that family came first. I might have surrendered. I might have slept on my own sofa while Ava took my bedroom. I might have paid for her beauty studio. I might even have apologized for being angry. But they called while I was thousands of miles away. Distance gave me something I had never possessed around them. Silence. Space. Time to think. All I did was call my landlord. Daniel protected my apartment. The police protected my property. The documents protected the truth. But the person who finally protected my life was me. My family made 41 calls because they thought panic would bring me running home. They were wrong. I stayed in Greece. I finished my vacation. And when I returned, I no longer belonged to them. They had changed the lock on my apartment. What they never expected was that I would change the door they had used to control me. This time, none of them would ever receive another key.